Jason Reed with Inner Edge Music, and I'm here with the guys from Sloppy Seconds outside of Skip Gibson's Barbecue. Pretty cool venue. Have you guys ever played at a barbecue before, BA?
Actually, I think we played at a barbecue a couple nights ago. Yeah,
Oh,
it was.
okay. So this is the barbecue tour right now. It's not
this
really.
is, we're doing the honey barbecue show, and then there's going to be a hot barbecue show, and eventually we're going to work all our way up to brisket. So at some point, yeah, we're going to cover every type of barbecue on this tour.
And your next album is actually called Sweet and Sour, so it's quite a. It's not, and I'm just messing.
Szechuan spicy beef sloppy. Yeah.
Definitely. Well, guys, your legacy, you guys go way, way back, and I wanted to ask you about the early years. Indianapolis, Indiana, 84 into 85, mid-80s there. What was the scene like back there for punk rock music?
Well, it was really blooming. It was growing a lot. Probably the two most original, two of the first quasi-punk bands out of Indy were the Great Gizmos, and then along came the Zero Boys, and then we followed not too long after the Zero Boys.
Okay, so a pretty vibrant scene for what it was.
It was kind of, not so much, it was kind of isolated to sort of the north side into the Broad Ripple area. Okay. We were from the south side of Indianapolis, so whenever we would head north, it was sort of like a pilgrimage to try to find a cool record store, and that's where most of the like-minded people in Indianapolis hung out, was in the Broad Ripple area at the time.
Gotcha. All right, and you concur. Similar recollection of.
Oh yeah, I mean, Broad Ripple was an area of Indianapolis where a lot of the punk scenes were. We would go up and go to a couple record stores and pick up some really good vinyl, and pick up flyers and see who was playing.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of going to record stores, which is something we've all experienced, obviously, through the years, those early influences for you guys, very first album, or probably 7-inch or cassette, or whatever it may have been back then. I'll start it over here with one of the newest members of the band. Newest, I'm saying that relatively, since the early 90s, right? Ace. Ace, we'll get it going with you, sir. Very first album, 7-inch, that you purchased back in the day that was influential.
Just live Cheap Trick. Budokan was a big influence. Early Blondie, stuff like that.
I could see your stylistic. I could see the Cheap Trick influence too, man. I'm really liking it. All right, the man, the myth, the legend, BA. What was your first, so to speak?
Our introduction to rock and roll was Kiss, because we were comic book collectors, and that was the ideal introduction to this whole new world when we were 13 years old, to look into what music was happening. It wasn't just a bunch of long-haired stoners in T-shirts standing on stage. These guys had character. They were characters, and they were larger than life. And I always said that Kiss was the perfect comic book collector's introduction to rock and roll.
Wow.
So, and as we got a little more diversified, we got into Bowie and Alice Cooper and Rolling Stones. And then we heard the Ramones, and nothing was ever the same.
And of course, everybody, you guys are usually compared to the Ramones in your stylistic influences and whatnot, so that makes a lot of sense. And the Ramones being a band that didn't take themselves, I guess, I don't know if it's fair to say, but didn't take themselves too seriously. I mean, they weren't a little bit of not a campy band, but definitely in the same tradition of some of the other bands that you just referenced in a way.
I think so, but the thing about the Ramones is they were all about presenting a unified image. That was one thing I always loved about the Ramones. I mean, it was just, you knew exactly when you were looking at one of the Ramones. They had the leather jackets, the T-shirts, the jeans, the sneakers. That was a Ramone, So there was no question what type of band they were going to be. They were street kids. They stripped it down. They wanted to bring fun back to rock and roll. Yeah. So, and we kind of went off on a tangent from that with a little bit of junk culture influence and a lot of beer.
Yeah.
So
yeah, definitely. I could definitely see the historical lineage there. The paternity. There's no need for a paternity test because we know who your daddies were in some respects. How about you guys? Early influences, first album.
Well, the first single I remember getting as a little kid, it had been out several years earlier, but I've always been like a big Monster geek. I'm promoting Frankenstein here. So always been a big Munster geek, and the first record that I remember getting was a single of the Munster Mash.
Okay.
So that's an early recollection. That old Disney record, The Sounds of the Haunted House, that was the one I'd sit around and listen to that.
I have that too. A classic.
Ever I'd listen to that. The Chinese water torture bit and everything. Like I say, we're all kind of from the same school. It's like the Kiss, all the early Kiss stuff, the Stooges, the Dolls, the Ramones. I think we are. I think a lot of our lineage, as you were talking about, we like a lot of the same artists that influenced a lot of those guys. So I think we're also pulling a lot from that original background as well. Like a lot of the old classic
50s.
From the 50s, absolutely. Gene Vincent, Eddie Cochran. A lot of Chuck Berry. It's all just that the most roots of rock and roll.
Yeah, very cool.
Absolutely.
Very cool. And lastly,
And basically the same as what BA and Steve had said in Ace. Just basic stripped down rock and roll. I've really enjoyed the theater aspect of Alice Cooper, of course, Kiss, and another band that wasn't mentioned was Angel. Angel Hotter Than that is like an amazing stage performance and a lot of great hooks. And of course Ramones.
wonderful stuff. Well, you guys just name dropped so many just monumental figures in rock and roll history. And here with Inner Edge Music, I've had the pleasure actually of doing interviews with some of my musical idols, and I always get a little nervous, but it's always kind of a magical thing. I wanted to ask you guys if you've ever had the chance of actually interacting, either performing on stage, touring, or just meeting some of the big names, the influential guys that you guys named. Ever meet the guys in Cheap Trick?
No, I haven't actually.
Not yet.
Even though I'm from the same state
okay.
originally.
Well, sometimes it's dangerous, and that might be part of the rest of this narrative. Is sometimes you meet somebody and you have a certain expectation, and it can be a letdown. And not that we want to call out people or name names tonight, but just wanted to ask you guys that. So.
I'm just trying to think. We've shared stage with like Marky Ramone and the Intruders, and playing Ramones with him on stage was awesome.
Yeah, I was going to ask BA when he mentioned the Ramones if you had met any of the gentlemen. But
Yeah, we did that tour with Marky Ramone and the Intruders, and that was really cool to hear life stories that Marky shared from being in the band. So I always enjoyed that. Mark doesn't drink anymore, but I would hold up my drink and he'd say, "We could have really partied back in the day, BA." And I'd be, "Well, okay." He said, "Let me smell that." And he would sniff the drink. And when he figured out it was always Scotch, I told him he had to guess what brand it was. So
to be a fly on the wall during all of that, I would have loved to have just been there in that room. So.
It was pretty cool. On the Social Chaos tour, we got to play with a lot of really legendary punk bands. We played with the Vibrators every night. Awesome. That was really cool. Awesome. DOA was on the bill. Sham 69. That was TSOL. It was really tremendous seeing those bands up close and personal every night. And it was hectic. We were really living on the edge. But, we've gotten to rub shoulders, I guess you'd say, with a lot of established bands over the years, just through doing festivals, and we did our Sloppy Palooza shows for 3 years running, and brought a lot of bands to Indianapolis who normally would not make a tour stop there. So that was a kind of a treat to our fans too. Yeah,
I saw the billing of a lot of the names on there, and it's kind of a diverse, successful thing that you guys did.
Yeah, it was a cool thing we did for I think about 3 or 4 years running in the mid-'90s, and at that point the scene kind of established itself to the point where these bands would come back, and the Sloppy Paloozas had kind of outlived their use. So people keep asking us if we'll ever do it again. It's a possibility, but there hasn't been any serious discussion yet.
We'll start a Kickstarter campaign, Indiegogo. He'll go to BA's Facebook page. Yeah, the fans are already excited about it. Look at that. They're going to be tossing money at you guys up on stage tonight. BA, one question too, and I hate to go there, but I have to. Rocking the gold like BA Baracus on A-Team. Mr. T was a big idol of mine. In fact, I actually got to meet him for the first time about 6 months ago in LA when he was doing the whole Dancing with the Stars. And long story, but kind of interesting to meet a guy that I always viewed was larger than life. Have you ever met
I
Miller?
did meet Mr. T. Yeah, we were we went to a comic store where he was making an appearance when he was promoting a comic book line that he was running, and we were standing in line to get his autograph, and he saw my bling, and he was like, "Oh, now here's a Mr. T fan. We got to talk. Come on, we got to get some photos." So he yanked me out of the crowd, and he actually did that soundbite on More Trouble Than They're Worth for us, so that he does the what's my prediction for people who don't like sloppy seconds? Pain, you know.
Oh man, I forgot about that.
There saying, "No, this isn't like going to appear on a record or anything, is
you
it?"
sign
No,
a waiver?
No.
This isn't the same band that sang about Tracy Lords and you didn't get that waiver, but hey, you got it recorded. That's what matters. So. Wonderful.
Yep.
That's a beautiful story, BA, man.
That's cool.
All right. And lastly, gentlemen, thanks for waiting. But back to the question. What was the question? Oh, about getting the chance to really meet one's idols or people that you really like. Your stories on that front.
Well, a few years ago, I got to meet Alice Cooper.
Yeah. Wow.
That was really cool. I talked to him a lot about the old Alice Cooper band, and
He's done some book tours too. I almost saw him for one of those. But
yeah, I saw him, met him at one point, actually twice, but the first time was back ages ago. He was on this tour with Motorhead, something called the Monsters of, not the Monsters of Rock, but some kind of like rock and roll something or other.
Yeah.
And that was the first time I got to meet Lemmy as well, so that was kind of funny. That was
Rest in peace. Yeah, I never got a chance to meet him. I always wanted to go to the Rainbow Lounge next to the Roxy to see him there, but never happened.
yeah. It's Lemmy was really funny. He was funny. He was a big fan of like a lot of World War II memorabilia, and
a lot of German stuff.
He takes it with him on tour at the time. I don't know. Hell, he had like German military jackets sitting in his closet.
Okay.
Just in books about the Luftwaffe and all of the, and it was really amazing, really interesting.
History buff, we'll say, and that's a real.
I got to talk to him about Germany and his views of things that had happened, and it was. I mean, I don't want to get into it. I could sit here and talk for 30 minutes about it. But I'll just say he was just really interesting.
Yeah, very cool. And how about you, Matt?
Let's see. In the mid '80s, BA and I went to New York City to see the Ramones, and we were in a hotel. And BA and I were drinking mouthwash, which is, I guess, whiskey, scotch mixed with water. Okay. And I was getting a little hankering for some food, so I went downstairs to the lobby, walked outside. I looked to my left, looked to my right, had no idea. I have no idea where I was going. And I looked to my left, and Paul Stanley is prancing toward me really quickly, and I was like, "Paul Stanley of Kiss. Wow, Kiss is my favorite band." He goes, "What are you guys doing tonight?" And I said, "Gonna see the Ramones." He says, "Have a good time, man." And he just did his Paul Stanley spin, like he had his boots on, and just kept on walking.
Wow, that's magical, man. That's almost as good as the Mr. T story, but it's pretty.
Another one. So BA, I think BA, I don't know if you were with us or not, but Steve and I went to see Chuck Berry at a outdoor theater, and we had a few spirits, as anyone would. And Chuck was asking people to come up on stage as he was doing, a little rhythm section for Johnny B. Good. Yeah. And so my friend and I, they already asked for 2 little girls, 2 little boys, 2 women, and we knew, well, the next will be 2 men. Not that I'm a mature adult, but so I got up on stage and they were doing Johnny B. Dead, and I leaned into the mic to sing Johnny B. Dead.
It was Little Queenie.
Little Queenie, whichever. Okay. I leaned into the mic and Chuck slugged me across my jaw. I spun around, I looked, I was like, what the heck? I go to the edge.
Cold cocked.
Yeah, me and Keith Richards got punched by Chuck Berry, right? So I go to the edge of the stage and I just looked down, I'm like, that's not too far. And I stepped and I fell like 4 feet and I broke my ankle, so.
Wow, okay. But that was like a mic drop. You're like, I'm out. After getting punched, peace, just like, yeah.
I guess that would be my story. Well,
I mean, it was...
I think, sir, your story may have very well. Last but not least, that was an interesting story. So
he was punched by Chuck Berry in front of 15,000 people.
Yeah. And then later, I met someone who was at the show, and she said, "That was you?" I was like, "Yeah, true story."
Wow, that's what your grave is gonna say.
Yeah. We file that little adventure under one of our many fun with alcohol adventures.
The case files for sloppy seconds, confidential.
Elevation of the foot, I was fine.
Wow. Well, guys, thanks for your time. One last question: any plugs for any? I know you're touring, doing some shows. Any new material out there? Stuff that fans should be keeping their eyes open for. BA,
Well, we got a split 7-inch that we just did, track that we've had lying around probably for 15 years or more, called Johnny Be Dead. It's a tribute to Johnny Thunders, and it was a track that just never made it onto one of our albums previously. So somebody approached us about doing a split 7-inch on Failure Records, and we were like, well, all right, we'll put the overdubs on this track and bring it back to life. So, yeah,
From the archive a little bit.
yeah, it's got the classic sloppy sound. So I think anybody who listens to it will be pleased that we haven't changed, haven't matured.
Yes, sometimes not growing up is a good thing, and I'm happy to put myself in that camp as well. Gentlemen, thank you for your time, and we wish you all the best. All right, guys. Shake everybody's hand real quick. Fast motion. Okay. Thanks, guys. Peace.